Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Nitzo. This is an Oz Cyclone Chasers Cyclone video update for the 18th of January 2015, sponsored by our major sponsor, Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. We weren't going to update you until Tuesday, however, what we do have over the northwest part of WA, and we do need to talk about it, is a tropical cyclone warning has been declared for the area between Koory Bay and Port Hedland. That covers obviously the two major towns of Broome and Port Hedland, and then not only that, we have a tropical cyclone watch that extends even further west and covers all the major Pilbara towns. So I felt it was prudent that we actually do create a video for you for this developing situation. But while we're at it, we'll also talk a little bit more about Queensland and some really good storm activity that happened today over northern Queensland. And we'll start looking ahead at what could be happening in, say, a couple of weeks' time. So here's the plan from the Bureau of Meteorology, where they're expecting the system to be lying pretty well around Derby overnight tonight, and then off the coast of Broome by around about tomorrow afternoon. Now the models are predicting an intensification between tomorrow afternoon and overnight and into early part of Tuesday, and then from then a weakening, and depending on which model you use, a very rapid weakening as it heads further to the west-southwest. Now you can see here that the track is fairly confident of this west-southwest motion. It could be a little further offshore, probably less likely to be closer to the shore unless the system weakens dramatically. And if the system does weaken dramatically into a trough, then perhaps it will make landfall. But you can see here the bomb taking no chances here with this region because of the mining interests and the industry in the region. I guess any even hint of a tropical cyclone that needs to be acted upon. And so this particular low, as I mentioned, is being modelled to track in this direction. The computer models that do weaken it do then push it onto the coast around Port Hedland to Karratha, most of them. But the ones that keep this, and in fact there's very, very few that actually keep this a recognised system as far west as Karratha or Onslow. But the ones that keep it a little bit stronger keep it further offshore. If we take a zoom out approach and look at the tropical low and where it could be located, you can see here just to the east-northeast of Broome there's been a convective plume in the last sort of few hours. That's around about where our low is located. That low, as I mentioned, tracking to the west-southwest. As it gets offshore, it is expected to intensify by the computer models. Over to the east, we can see some very heavy thunderstorms developed around Cairns, pretty well from anywhere Cooktown south to around Cardwell today. Saw some really intense thunderstorm activity. Cardwell, in fact, I believe we've had reports of hail. You can count on one hand probably in the last 10 years how many times Cardwell has had hail. So very interesting thunderstorms indeed in that region. Okay, so without getting sidetracked, because that's what will happen if I start talking about thunderstorms, we'll have a look at where this low is expected to track. Now, currently the layer mean winds are going to track this system out here to the west. When it pushes off the coast, the system is then expected to take a more west-southwest track, and that's what the mean winds here are showing us. We've got a nice big high-pressure ridge in through the central parts of WA, and you can see that using the let me just get this tool out. Here you go. You can see that nice little ridge just in there. Very light winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere or the mid levels of the atmosphere, and are going to keep anything that develops off the coast pushing to the west. Now, if it had, say, developed up here around Darwin, which was where the models initially had it developing, it would push down to the south and make a landfall. Whereas at the moment, if the system becomes a little bit stronger and starts to get guided by a fairly strong mid-level ridge, it's expected to track to the west-southwest. The big factor becomes just how far west it pushes in the meantime, because if it pushes too far to the west, you could have a situation here where it pushes all the way out here before starting its west-southwest trajectory, in which case it's going to be too far offshore to make any impact on anyone. Even Barrow Island might be struggling to see any sort of impact from it. But if, on the other hand, it only pushes marginally offshore, so if it pushes, say, out to here, and then starts to track in a west-southwest direction, well, we've got an issue in a number of places there. And therein lies the dilemma for the Bureau of Meteorology. Just how far west will it push? Remembering, of course, that if it pushes further out here to the west, then we have no issue. The system will just track out here to the west-southwest. Even if it does take on this slightly more southwest track that I've shown, it's still going to remain well offshore. But on the other hand, if it only pushes, say, just out here, just past Broome, and then starts to track west-southwest, well, you could have a situation where maybe not a direct hit, but you could have a situation where it's putting at least some impact on those areas. While we're talking about impacts, the system is expected to be very, very small. So we're talking maybe a 200 kilometer to, or at max 300 kilometer diameter system. That's diameter, so that means from one edge to the other edge, not radius, so not from the edge to the middle. So we're talking about a system that's going to be very, very small. So in a system that is very, very small, it's very difficult to predict intensity. So this could not even form into a cyclone, or it could form into a category 2 or 3 system very, very quickly. And it will all depend on what the upper level winds are doing at the time and how much moisture is available to it. Now, we'll talk a bit more about that in our subscriber update. That's outside the scope of what we do for the national updates. But just be aware that fluctuations from the intensity forecast here can be expected. And just to, I guess, ease your mind a little, the situation that would happen if the system intensifies, say, into a Cat 4 or 5 unexpectedly, and I do mean very unexpectedly, is that it is more likely to push further offshore rather than close to the coast. So we're taking a look at the surface chart, or the surface winds chart, shown by the European model here, thanks to Weather Underground. And what we can see is, if you might be able to just make it out there, is the tropical low center right there, at around about 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. tomorrow in WA time. Now, if we just zoom in there compared to where Broome is, you can see the system will lie very, very close to Broome. And if we look at where the rainfall is, you can see some very heavy rainfall expected right around that Broome area tomorrow. Now, we talk a little bit more about this in the subscriber update. So join us as a subscriber, and we'll talk a bit more about what the individual places can expect. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, what we want to do is track this system over the next few hours once it pushes offshore. And this will be its key time to intensify. Now, it pushes offshore and moves fairly rapidly to the west-southwest. So let me just backtrack you here to where it's onshore. So you can see here, tracking west-southwest, crosses the coast around Broome, pushes offshore, develops winds of about 25 to 30 knots around its northern semicircle. But you can see also it's fairly trophy in nature, so it's going to be a tough call to see whether it can make cyclone status. Now, the model does deepen it into at least a marginal tropical cyclone or a very, very strong tropical low. Once again, though, you can see that at the surface it's very trophy in nature, so actually around here we see very little wind, whereas on the northern side we see fairly strong winds, getting up to gale force winds. So it's going to be a touch and go call as to whether the Bureau calls this a cyclone once it does get offshore. And this is what I mean. The intensity forecasts do shift. Now, as we head into Tuesday morning, or overnight Monday into Tuesday, the system begins to show signs of weakening and then completely weakens out into a trough. So it doesn't even follow that predicted track from the Bureau, because by the time the system is absorbed into what's actually the dominant low pressure system, which is out here, it's a dominant system, but it has no weather associated with it, and it just absorbs the other tropical low into its circulation, into its greater circulation. The GFS, as always, is a little bit more aggressive, and you can see here the system tracks off the coast just to the north of Broome this time, but almost immediately once it tracks off the coast has developed a symmetrical structure and develops gales and becomes a tropical cyclone by Monday afternoon. And so we then track the system out here to the west-southwest, and you can see it actually possibly develops into a Category 1 or 2 system by that stage. Once again, you can see the GFS also predicting that trophy nature of the system, and you can see it linking with the trough over WA at the moment. Now, that can also provide a course of low vertical shear, which can help the system intensify quickly. And remember, of course, that because it's so small, a quick intensification cannot be ruled out. Now, if we go through to 7 a.m., 10 a.m., so we're going through the timestamps now, and if we go through right through to a Tuesday afternoon now, we see the system finally beginning to weaken and becomes absorbed into a much larger trough system here. So at no stage are the computer models tipping a actual landfall of this system. However, if the system weakens too quickly, then the system could drag southwards because of that trough that it's aligned to, or that it's linked to. Once again, before I leave you folks, Koory Bay to Port Hedland in a warning. That means gales to be experienced within 24 hours, or possibly experienced within 24 hours, and then watch extends all the way to Exmouth, because I've just shown you the direction that it's expected to move. Across northern Australia, no prizes for guessing where the max rainfall is going to be up there in the Kimberley. There's also a little bit of rain here along the Queensland coast, the central and northern Queensland coast, from thunderstorm activity that could rage on overnight, and this evening and overnight. Tomorrow, that rain starts to push offshore and onto the coast. So onto the coast and offshore. So Broome, Derby, all the way through to around about Columbaroo is where we're expecting rainfall. The heaviest, obviously, around the Broome to Cape Leveque region. Over the Queensland region, we're looking at more isolated shower and storm activity now, and mostly located up here in the northern tropics, and isolated monsoonal break activity occurring along in the NT. On Tuesday, as the system tracks offshore, so too will all the rain with it. We're not expecting to see a big rain totals anywhere around here. Even if it weakens out into a trough system, the most it'll bring, by the looks of this, is going to be just shower activity. Across southeast Queensland, we're going to see some very strong rainfall activity, or very strong rainfall signals. We could be seeing signals that are much higher than this 15 to 25 millimeters predicted here. Some of the computer modelling possibly predicting falls of up to 100 millimeters in that region. So very good activity developing around southeast Queensland. Also, a little bit of a increase in northerlies here will result in increased or enhanced activity across the Arnhem district of the Territory. On Wednesday, that activity across southeast Queensland heads westwards, and we see a redevelopment of a new trough system and a lot of moisture pumping into that new trough system again. So a reintroduction of heavy shower and storm activity, and I do mean heavy shower and storm activity, not just your general run-of-the-mill storms. Oh, by the way, sorry, we lost track there. By Wednesday, we're not expecting that low to be producing any rain anywhere across the Pilbara. So, folks, that's it in a nutshell. Oh, we'll just get out to Thursday as well, because Thursday, just to reiterate the word heavy for Queensland, we're looking at heavy shower and storm activity again across the state, extending further northwest, this time also to the Gulf country and possibly even the eastern districts of the Northern Territory. A reintroduction now of showers and storms without the monsoon here in the North Kimberley, and a continuation of monsoon break conditions across the NT. The total forecast rainfall for the first 4 days we've just been through, so for the next 4 days after that, you can see that Queensland continues to be, or coastal Queensland continues to be, the hotspot for storm activity. And by the end of the week period, we could be seeing a new tropical low developing, or at least forming in its first stages of forming out here in the Timor Sea. But take those predictions with a grain of salt, since they're a week away. So as we get into late January and early February, the areas of interest in particular that we're going to be watching are going to be this Joseph Bonaparte Gulf Timor Sea area, and this spot just off the North Queensland coastline will be the two areas that I believe we'll be watching as we get into last couple of days of January and into early February. More details on that in the individual state updates for subscribers during the week. Thanks for watching this slightly longer video update, folks, but I thought it was prudent to alert you to the movements and expectations of this system. For more details, once again, I do encourage you to become an OCC subscriber and help us document more cyclones. Thanks for watching this video update. We'll have another one specifically for Western Australian viewers tomorrow evening. It will, however, be much shorter than this one. Until then, have a great day.